Good morning, everybody. It's Lynn from A Bit of Birdsong, and I am really happy to be sharing a tutorial for a style of journal that I've been doing. This is the type of journal I'm talking about. You have a hardback cover, whether you use a file folder or an old book that's been taken apart, and what you end up with is every page being sewn in with fabric strips, and this one's so embellished it's hard to see, but you will end up with fabric on the pages that you can work with as far as just hanging little charms. To me, it protects the pages because the paper is not bending constantly. Everything is attached to fabric. The first thing that I do when making one of these journals is pick my cover. I have used really sturdy file folders in the past, which is what was on the book I just showed you. I have also used old book covers. This came from just a plain writing journal, and I knew as soon as I looked at it that I wanted to purchase it to use this cover. I want to do a boho journal. I want it to be really bright and have lots of beautiful images. So this is perfect. And all I did was take a couple of items. I used my X-Acto knife and a pair of scissors to very carefully cut the front and the back away from the spine. But really, there are a lot of tutorials on this. I think most of us know how to take the fronts and backs off of books. Anyway, this was simple. It's a small, lightweight journal, and it was able to take an X-Acto knife and score between the front and the back and where the spine was. There was actually just a natural thin crease there. The inside of this journal was plain white, just like the paper here. I don't want that plain white for this journal. I wanted something that felt vintage. I chose a couple of pages from a vintage Sears and Roebuck catalog. I've got these beautiful images. I did measure exactly the size that I would need to cover the white paper that was showing, which for this was 5 1/4 inches by 8 inches, and I used Mod Podge to carefully paste these pages down so they're completely flat with no bubbles. When you're done sewing the pages to a piece of fabric, and I'm going to show you all of this, you're going to have a piece of fabric glued into the center of the book with your pages on it. So if you want to put down something like this on the inside covers, do that first. I would suggest that. You're going to have fabric showing on top of it, and I think it would be neater to have the paper glued down flat underneath this rather than try to glue it over the top. However, you could use a thin fabric here and glue it down first, and then you could glue fabric over the top to make this part look more square and uniform. There are a lot of ways that you can do this. The real focus of this tutorial is to show you how I sew the pages in with a sewing machine. We've got the cover. I have chosen the piece of fabric that I'm going to sew the pages to. Once they're on their fabric strips, I've cut out 10 pieces of paper that I want to use, and I have chosen watercolor paper because I love to use my journals like art books, with a lot of distressing and gesso and paint and collage, and I love how heavy the pages are. You can use any kind, just realize that every set of 2 pages is going to be a signature. So the more pages that you have, the more sewing you're going to be doing. I've already cut my strips that I'm going to sew the pages to. These are a little bit wide looking at them now, so I'm probably going to cut them down just a little bit. I don't really measure too much on this part. I just kind of look at it and try to determine what size I want the strips. I will need a fabric strip for the front and for the back. I'm going to go ahead and trim these down a little bit with my cutting tool, and then we're going to go over to the sewing machine and I'm going to show you how to sew the pages in. I think you can see okay here. I've got some gold thread on the sewing machine. I love working with gold. I have my fabric strips and I am going to turn them so that the brightest side faces out so that we can see them. And I'm going to take 2 of my pages and we're going to sew the pages to these strips. I'm going to just do one at a time. I'm going to set the stitch to a wide zigzag stitch. Again, I'm not really doing a lot of measuring. I'm going to lay this down as straight as I possibly can, and I'm just going to sew without worrying with this wide zigzag stitch. Sometimes I do a stitch back just to prevent unraveling. If you hold it at the bottom, it just will line up pretty easily. And I'm going to take another page and again just use your eyes to make sure that things are lining up okay. And you can see these strips are still kind of wide. I'm not going to worry about it right now. For now, I just want to show you that you want to leave enough of a gap that you can put the needle through again when you sew these to your fabric strip that's going to be glued into the book. I give it about that much space, which looks like about 1/2 inch to me. And with this, we're just going to eyeball it all the way to the bottom and keep that gap as close as we can to being exactly the same all the way down. Then I'm going to take another strip of fabric, and this side will be quicker. We're just going to do the same thing on this side. This fabric is nice because you can see through it, and I can see exactly where the pages end underneath. If you're using a fabric that you can't see through, you kind of have to use your, kind of feel as you're going down. So you can see this is ready to fold and be sewn into or onto the fabric strip that we're going to use. What I am measuring each time is the gap between the pages and to make sure they're straight. That's the most important thing. At this point, we have 5 sets of 2 pages each. They've been sewn to a fabric strip, and then a fabric strip has been sewn to the other side so that when the page is open on either side, you're going to see fabric. Since it is hard to show you everything from the sewing machine because of the angle, I want to take this opportunity to put a few tips in with pages on the art desk where we've got bright light and I'm thinking of a few things that I want to insert. When I cut this fabric, you have options here how you can do this. Sometimes I leave a little overhang if I want it to be a little bit on the messy side. You can cut really close, and you can also sort of round it. This fabric looks like it's going to unravel somewhat. I'm not worried about that. Once you start working with the mixed media, with glue, collage, paint, a lot of times this fabric's going to get stiff anyway and stick to the page. That's one thing I wanted to tell you. Another thing I wanted to say is that when you're measuring at the sewing machine and you're sewing these strips on, I don't focus on getting this even. I'm not worried about putting the exact same amount of fabric onto each page. My concern is keeping the same size gap between these 2 pages from the top to the bottom. So you want to think in really straight lines and right angles, if you will. Like when you look at this one, I might have gotten this one a tiny bit wider down here, but the goal is to really keep the same gap. That way your book comes out really straight. So I'm going to take these pages to the sewing machine and show you how to sew the pages onto the little fabric strip that we're going to glue into the book. I really hope that you can see me and hear me okay. I did an earlier version of this portion and I felt like the view was just not what you deserved to see in order to do this easily. So this is the strip of fabric that is going to be glued into the journal. I'm going to be sewing my signatures onto this, and it is really easy to do. I have changed the stitch on the sewing machine to a straight stitch, and I'm going to make it a very long stitch. We don't really need a short stitch. I'm probably going to want about 1 inch of fabric to glue down into the book. So we're going to start sewing the pages kind of far into this piece of fabric. I'm simply going to line it up. Again, we're going to focus on straight lines, keeping things straight and just using our eyes to gauge that. I'm going to carefully bring it over to the sewing machine, this first set of pages, and open it up. And I'm going to get the needle right in between those 2 pages. And once again, we're going to line the fabric up the best we can. And I'm going to sew a straight line all the way down between those 2 pages, just staying on the fabric. We don't want to get into the actual pages. And I know there's background noise. My fiance is teaching a guitar lesson right now, so this is kind of the art house. We've got paper in here and music in the next room. For the next page, I'm just going to put the next page right next to the first set, and you will see when you open it up how the pages start to stagger. And I'm going to bring that over to the sewing machine. This is really easy. You want to make sure that the pages are lined up at the top and at the bottom. That's the most important thing. And as long as you do that, the book is going to come out straight. I'm going to put my needle down and sew right between those 2 pages. So you can see we have this first page. See how it leaves a little gap? And we just want to keep it as even as we can. It looks like I might have gotten off a tiny bit on that one. But let's put these into place and take it to the sewing machine. Keep the pages lined up and just hold everything. And so right between those 2 pages. So here we are back at the art desk. That was so easy, wasn't it? And you end up with this pretty fabric showing between the signatures. For the most part, the pages are really even. Now looks like I'm a little bit off there, but it's okay. I'm not worried about it. I think it's going to be fine once we get it glued in. And I'm going to cut the fabric on this side. Looks like we have about 1 inch over here. So I'm going to cut on the other side about the same amount. And again, just getting it as close as I can. Looks like it's going to be about right there. And make sure I leave at least 1 inch all the way up. So the next part, we need to have fabric on the outside. Sometimes I do this part first, but with this one, I wanted to do my pages first so I know exactly the size that I need. If you do the fabric on the outside first, sometimes you end up being stuck with having to add enough pages to fill up the spine. This way we're going to match the spine to how many pages we have. So I'm going to need enough fabric. Basically, I'm going to do the same size piece to glue on the outside. So I need to pick the fabric that I want, and I'm probably going to go with this same pattern, this same canvas-looking material. I want to keep this fringe on. I like things like that. So let's cut. Let's make it about this long. And we need I'll start out with something this wide. Did you see what I did? I measured the outside fabric the same size as the inside fabric. And what I'm talking about is that we're going to have a piece glued on the outside. You can cut it down depending on how much overlap you want. You might not want to cover up a lot of what is on the book. However, you need enough to grab hold. You know, you don't want a centimeter over here because it's not going to hold. So right now I'm just kind of thinking and looking and figuring out how far in to put the glue. I really think I'm going to leave this fabric the size that it is, and I'm going to put glue on the fabric about an inch in on each side. And I love my fast grab tacky glue. I'm just going to go straight up the side. Everybody's got their glue choices. I love this glue. That's going to be glued down to the book. So let's look at this. That's the front, but I think I might want that fringe at the top. So I'm going to put this right here. And I'm going to put that there. And then I'm going to see if that leaves us room for the pages to be glued in. And it does. And I like that. I like the looks of that. And you know, while the glue is wet, you can move things around a tiny bit. I'm going to slide the fabric down. And I may end up trimming at the bottom. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm pulling the fringe down a little bit. This fringy top on the fabric. And with this part, I measure. So there's an inch there, an inch there. That looks good. Before I glue this in, I'm going to go ahead and cut my excess fabric off. It's still going to be nice and playful and organic. So now I'm going to take tacky glue and I'm going to put a row right there to make sure that fabric really sticks to the book. You can see where I've put the glue. I'm going to spread it out a little bit so that we don't have big clumps. Pick out which fabric I want to have in the front. I think I want that bright. And I'm going to lay that down in the center. I need to bring it up a little bit. And glue that down there. So you can see this is not, my book is not perfect. That could have been trimmed to be more even. I could still do that if I wanted to do that. I'm going to leave it the way it is. This is what I want. This is going to be a boho, sort of gypsy-esque journal, and I want it to feel very organic and very homemade. Love the bright colors. I just spent some time, you know, pressing that down. I did notice, let's see, so that's okay there. On the back, it looked like this fabric had turned under a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't know that I want that. So let me just see if I can't get that to unfurl a little bit. Yeah. Put a little bit more glue under there. I keep my glue sitting upside down in a container, and it makes it easy to use all the time. I love that this is flexible. Again, let's just go back and press down between the pages and the fabric in between each signature, and make sure that the glue is attached to everything. And I think that's it. That's going to be really pretty when it's decorated. And you can add more to, you know, to the front, to the back. I suspect if you wanted to put some kind of, this is a floppy spine, so I don't know if I would recommend it, but if you wanted to hang some sort of charm, you could do that before you glue the pages inside, so that you see it here but it doesn't show up inside. And this turns out really even. You can see I probably should have slid the pages up a little bit more, but I think it's fine. I think it's fine. It's a good book. It's a good book. All right, so that's it. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know, and I will do my best to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.